We really should have waiting parents, not waiting children. Over 100,000 children are available for adoption through the U.S. foster care system, and 27% don't have anyone, like a relative or foster parent, in the process of adopting them. 60% are between the ages of 5 and 17, and 2/3 are part of sibling groups of 2 to 8 children. Hey listener, my name is Marcy Bursack. My husband and I chose adoption as our plan A. After blogging about our journey adopting a sibling pair, I began mentoring families right in my own living room. That passion grew into the Forgotten Adoption Option, a nonprofit I now lead as a volunteer while working full-time in the tech industry. From my blog, 3 books, app, and classroom lesson to now a 45-minute course called Foster Care Adoption Simplified, which you can find at ForgottenAdoptionOption.com, I've created practical, heartfelt resources to help families navigate the foster care adoption process. As you listen to this episode, I encourage you to ask yourself, who in my circle needs to hear this? It's often people in what we call helper professions, people like therapists, nurses, doctors, police officers, firefighters, social workers, and teachers like my husband. These are the people who tend to step forward to adopt children from foster care. But this work isn't only about becoming an adoptive family, it's also about becoming an advocate and ally. Every waiting child deserves not just a forever family, but a community of people who champion their future. Whatever led you to this podcast, I am thrilled that you are here. My mission is simple, to help every waiting child be with their forever family. And that's exactly why I host this podcast.
Welcome to the Forgotten Adoption Option podcast. In this episode, we're going to discuss how Arkansas is making it possible to count down to 0 waiting children. I have wanted to do this episode for a very long time, and what happened, what made it immediate right now as a bonus episode, is on January 1, I got a news alert about an article with this title: Number of Arkansas children waiting for adoption drops to 146. That's right, 146, a 3-digit number, a substantial improvement. I had to take a double take, and I think my husband and I spent the next 25 minutes trying to figure this out. Arkansas has less than 200 waiting children, and to give some context, in 2011, when Project Zero began, they were founded to help nearly 700 waiting children find adoptive families. So what happened and how, I need to know, and I think you also are very curious, because the answer can help every other state help more waiting children. So I emailed Christie Irwin. Hey, Christie.
Thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you here. Christie Irwin is the executive director of Project Zero. I love their name. And you might know that because it probably sounds familiar. I wear their gray t-shirt all the time, all the places. It has white letters and a design like a definition from a dictionary. And it reads this: 0, noun, the number of children that should be waiting in foster care to be adopted. I wholeheartedly agree. So yes, when you help over the course of 2011 till now, help over 1,600 children find a permanent family, you're allowed to say you're getting pretty close to 0. So, Christie, before our listeners think this is a pop quiz on numbers and math, we're just going to dive right in. And you have an interesting story with your own family, because you're also a foster and adoptive mom. So can you tell us a bit about your family?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Actually, it's crazy, but 33 years ago this month, it was a winter day. I had 2 boys that were preschoolers and a 1-year-old daughter. And I was sitting, rocking her. They were unusually quiet, asleep. And I began to just look at my daughter and think, of all of the kids who didn't have someone to rock them on a winter day and who did not have the nurture and the care that they needed. And as a Christian, I felt like at that point that God was saying to me, you know what? The world has seen enough of the marching and the picketing and the criticism about abortion and about all of this. And what the world needs to see from you is action. And so that started a journey. That one moment in time became a movement in my own life that took us initially to fostering newborns for a private adoption agency, which we did for 11 years. And then we made the move over to DCFS in the state of Arkansas and fostered there for 8 years. Around 50, a little over 50 kiddos, because we usually did one child at a time. And 2 of our precious ones actually became our son and daughter. And so at that point we became adoptive parents. So the call on my life has had many different facets, from foster care to adoption to advocate. And so our kids range in age from 38 down to 17. Four boys and two girls, and seven precious grandchildren. And the life, it's really interesting because that moment in time changed my life forever and redirected the course of my life, my mission, and took what a housewife with a sociology degree took me and all my imperfections and all my inadequacies, and God just said, let's take this housewife and let's set her on a different course. And so that's kind
Wow.
of in a nutshell. There's many pieces to that, but that is it in a nutshell.
But you're sitting, I'm thinking you're juggling three children. And
Mhm.
then, so from a birth order, because we got to six, but I heard three biological and then you adopted two. Where did child number six go at the tail
I'm
end?
sorry. Yeah, four biological. So we
Yeah.
have, but when we started, we had three biological, and then our last biological child came in the mix of all that. So they're 38, 35, 34, 30, 22, and 17.
So you had a biological child while you were fostering.
Fostering. Yes,
Okay, because
yes.
listeners are going to be like, I've always wondered, should I? And Christy did it. Christy just said yes together.
It, yeah, yeah, it made no sense really, because, we had all these littles and it made no sense, but it was what we were supposed to do, and it was a life changer, to be sure.
And you just said yes. You
Yep.
felt it, and by faith, I love that. So you work at an organization that to me has one of the coolest names because it's clear. Like you're called Project Zero, and then your name is okay. You don't even tell me the mission. I get it.
Right.
Listeners, if you haven't yet, highly encourage follow their content on social. They post a lot of really good reels that you can help advocate on behalf of children that are waiting. Very easy to find. But curious, how did you then? So you're over here being a mom, saying yes to helping to even become into the foster care space, but now you're going to go work for an agency. How did that happen?
Well, it's very interesting. I had actually written a book called The Middle Mom years ago, and Jeff and I, my husband, were down at a foster adoption conference in Austin where I was just leading a little breakout session. And so we were sitting in as the pastors were sharing about foster care and adoption, and one pastor said one line that once again radically changed our world. And he said, if Christians were doing what we should be doing, there would be zero kids in foster care waiting to be adopted. And I got home from that conference and I could not shake that one line. And so Jeff and I were talking, and I had been heading up a coalition called the Pulaski County Adoption Coalition, and all of those things were going out all over the country and were stopping. And so we had a decision to make. We could end, we could whatever. Anyway, and so Jeff said, "Hey, why don't you just rename the coalition? It's already a 501c3. It's dying. Why don't you call it Project Zero?" So not many people know that Jeff Irwin is the one that named Project Zero. And so I went to DCFS, just not for their permission necessarily, but just to say, hey, here's what we want to do. We want to start a new organization, a new ministry, a new mission called Project Zero. And we laid out exactly what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it and the three tenets that were going to help us get there. And then over the course of the last 14 years, those have just kind of gone on steroids and taken off, but yet the mission is still the same. Zero kids waiting in foster care to be adopted in our state and in every other state, because it's not about numbers, even though there's a number in our name. It's about every individual soul, every individual child that we get to know and we get to love on and we get to pray for and we get to fight 24/7 for. And so that's how Project Zero is born, and kind of set on the course to help our state get to zero.
So who claims the founder title? Because in your email signature it says executive director. Does your husband claim founder, or do you claim
Oh
founder?
no, I guess I do. He kind of is. He likes to say he's Christie's husband, and I'm like, no, that's not enough credit. You got a lot more going on, sweet man. But yeah, I do, and I co-founded with one of my really good friends. She does. She actually leads another adoption charge for another organization now, but we get together all the time, and we're both adoptive moms, and so yeah, it was just a miracle and a really exciting thing.
I did not know that about your name in terms of why. And and it's interesting because for you it's lingered. Whereas for me, I think the data I heard it slightly different but same was if every Christian church in the country had one family step up to adopt a waiting child, we wouldn't have anyone waiting. So
Yes,
that's where yeah, it's interesting. We have such a parallel of like we felt called to do this, and we took that
absolutely.
initiative, and it's amazing to me, Christy. Just you're juggling so much while you're being led to do this. You know, you're raising your own family, you're founding an organization, you're carrying a lot on your shoulders. So in that time, the headline came reporting about how Project Zero did in 2025. Was there something different in 2025 compared to every other year?
I think we've added some things, but I think what is happening is just the intensity of what we do, and we can talk more about that. The child's specificity of what we do, where we are working in close partnership with Arkansas DCFS, and we are doing some really outside the box things that state agencies and private nonprofits don't normally do together. And those things are changing the course of history for waiting kids in our state. And it is profound. The last 2 years, we have seen both of those years our longest waiting child be adopted. The first year was a child that had been waiting 14 years because of his complex medical issues. Last year was our Cozy, who had been waiting 15 years to be adopted. Nonverbal, autistic, precious 19-year-old. And he was adopted last August. And we got to have the
Wow.
opportunity of being there and celebrating that. And so those things are a result of much prayer. They're a result of um, speaking out on behalf of the fact that every single child is adoptable. And that's one of the things that we want people to know. We value our waiting kids. They're precious. They're not foster kids. We don't use that when we talk about them. They're kids in foster care through no fault of their own. But that is not a label we want to define them. They are defined by so much more, regardless of their behavior, their attitudes, their actions, what's happened to them in the past, all of that. They're precious. And is it going to be easy? I can tell you as an adoptive mom, no. Is it going to be an emotional, hard thing? Yes, because our kids have been through hard things. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. And so we want the world to know about waiting kids. Let's just be honest. Here in Arkansas, in every other state, and of course across the world, but we're only dealing with kiddos in foster care in America. So we just, we just have tried to think outside the box, and praise God, we have a DCFS director and a governor and all of that who are on board with coming alongside us to think outside the box, if that makes sense.
Which
Within
is
the
huge.
parameters, I mean, we're staying in the parameters of, we're not doing anything that's wrong. I don't mean that, but just big, bold ideas and visions to help kids find families.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you're innovating, which is huge and a big deal when you're kind of creating your own path. And I
Right.
know from the photos in the news article, you all did like a big splash in your city banners and you announced there were 146 kids waiting. I'm very curious, just from what I know on logistics, like you got to order the
Right.
thing and the thing. Like when did you know the final number you were going to share? Was that like the very end of December or?
Yes, it was I found out about probably about 4 or 5 days before when our DCFS director called me and just said, "Hey, we're going to do a press conference and get ready. You're not going to believe what the latest data shows us." And so she let me know that. I screamed on the phone, of course, and and we, we started planning that press conference so that we could kind of make that announcement. And people in our state are so gracious and so invested in waiting kids. I mean, they really are. And I think so many people follow our kids' stories. They, I'll run into somebody at Target, and they'll say, "Hey, what about so and so?" They follow that, and sometimes it's the stories that are really, really hard, and they just want to know, or they'll say, "Hey, I've been praying for him. How is there any update? I know you can't share, much, but is there an update?" That kind of thing. And so, actually, it's not only in Arkansas; it's people all over the country, and we have we. I'm kind of getting off track, but we answer all of the inquiries for the state for about kiddos in the Heart Gallery. And so I think our logistics coordinator let me know that last week that in the last 2 years we've gotten inquiries from 44 foreign countries from people who want to know, is international adoption an option to adopt from America? And so it's not in our case, but it's just so beautiful. They'll send cards from overseas to our kids. And so it's just helping the world know that there are kids who just need someone to say yes, as you mentioned earlier. We have a little saying, the incredible power of a single yes. And that's what our kids need. They need a yes, and they need somebody to stick by that yes.
I love everything you're saying, Christy, from the sense that I'm probably gonna butcher the quote, but I think her name is Margaret Mead, and there's something like never doubt the impact a group of citizens can have together, because that's the only thing that's ever done like an impact.
Yes.
I'm kind of butchering it, but the point of what
Yes.
I'm hearing is I love getting to engage in the ways that we can from like a social media perspective and following that and advocating,
Right.
but just the kind of support you're getting both locally and internationally from people that, to exactly your point, that these kids like there's a hope and a future. Like that's what
Yes.
you're creating. And so we're all, wanting to champion that and advocate and be allies and help where we can. And so I am curious though. So January 1's like a date, and I know sometimes the way the system works, sometimes paperwork gets a little stuck in things. Were there kids that were kind of on the cusp of getting adopted as that number came out? So there's like a few more that have trickled in
Yes,
since
I
then.
actually this is so funny. I just got a message on our little staff, whatever it is, text message thread, where our marketing director had put together some photos, and she said, "I just had to share this happy collage with all these banners. I don't think I even got them all because my head was getting swirly with all the names and faces, and I didn't want to label wrong." 29 kids got family found banners since mid-December. So what that means is adoptions weren't final, but 20, what she is saying is on our Heart Gallery, when a family is identified and that process is going, we put a banner up that just says family found. And so what she's saying is since mid-December, we have put up 29 family found banners, and we're still working through some of that from our last connection event. And so yes, it's ever changing. And this week, in fact, we had one of our boys that had been waiting a really long time, Alex, um, is 18. He just graduated, and his adoption finalized this week after 4,040 days in foster care. And when you let that sink in, and he doesn't even look like the same teen. He truly looks he just looks so content and so happy. And um, we had several people send things for him. We made a big gift basket because he loves snacks and he loves fast food, and so we did tons of gift cards and dropped it off on their front porch because they happen to live locally. And after 4,040 days, he's home. He's not in the system. The count is over, and he's a son. And he and his mom, he is a single mom, and they wore matching black and white tennis shoes because he loves black and white. And they both had matching shirts in the courtroom. And so it's those stories that change us, and that catapult us forward in being creative, in being determined and urgent. That's the other word. Because 4,040 days is not okay.
Right.
And it's not okay. One day, honestly, is not okay. And what a beautiful thing it would be to have families lined up out the door so that when TPR happens, DCFS has a plethora of families to pick from. And so the urgency of it is critical.
100%. I think our listeners are like, Mercy, that's what you just said at the beginning of this episode. You said we should have waiting parents and not waiting families. So maybe Christie's going to go sit with that and maybe it's
Yeah,
going to have
that's right. That's right.
huge impact. Thank you for sharing those stories. And Christy, I do want to point out, because I came from the nonprofit world before I pivoted into tech. I'm very aware of the high turnover rate in the nonprofit sector. You're a founder
Right.
in this space. So thank you. And I just want to point out like the impact that exponentially multiplies because you've been in this space, you've been fighting and championing these children, and you've got over a decade where this has been your mission. I just thank you
Yeah.
because you can move things so much faster and forward because you've stuck it out, and I'm sure it's not been easy by any means.
Yeah.
But wow, Christy. So you mentioned earlier you've done some kind of innovative things. Can you tell
Yeah.
us like what are you all doing that's a bit different out of the box that maybe we can do in our own communities?
Absolutely. Well, we have kind of three things that we do, that three main things. The first one is raise awareness. And I laugh when I think in 2011, the first thing we did is we cut an album, which just sounds hysterical. We had a guy here in Little Rock that used to be in a big Christian rock band in the 80s, and he produced it. We went to Nashville. I mean, these two housewives, we go to Nashville, we do this album. It's called Grafted, and it did not win any Grammys.
Christy,
What?
you see.
No, I didn't sing on it. But we had Taylor Swift's fiddle player and the Bluegrass Band of the Year and all these different, I don't know. It was wild, but it was fun. And like I said, it did not win a Grammy, did not, but it was just a way we could get the word out about adoption. But our main ways are the Heart Gallery, which are professional photos of waiting kids. And we have the only online exhibit in Arkansas. And then we have three physical exhibits that travel the state, like to churches and businesses and events, that kind of thing. And then about 11 years ago, we realized that, if hearing a number of waiting kids, whatever that number is, kind of takes you back, and then seeing the faces of a waiting child compels you because you look at that face and you think, that could be my child or my grandchild, or these are just kids needing families. Then what would it mean to give waiting kids a voice and to allow them to share their own truths in their own words, their own way, as much of it, as little of it as they want to. So we started working with a filmmaker named Nathan Willis, who's now an Emmy award-winning filmmaker, and he lives in New
Those are
Orleans.
great. This makes so much sense now.
I'm going to get that in. But Nathan, we started working with him to create what we call short films of waiting kids. And so since that time, we've shot over 1,000 short films giving waiting kids a voice, and it is making a profound difference in the lives of waiting kids. So also our social media, we're sharing stories. We believe in the power of stories. Being able to share that without breaching confidentiality, without stepping too much on things, but letting people know the realness of what's going on. The second thing is to build hope. So we're raising awareness, we're building hope in waiting kids. We do that a lot of ways. It could be anything from taking a child to lunch, hosting a birthday party, buying a banjo. I mean, just all kinds of different ways. And when we build hope, we open it up to people across the country and world. We have, like, a couple of weeks ago, I got a message, so-and-so has lost hope. Can you guys just put it out there and ask your people to send cards or gift cards or all of that? And people from all over the country will do that. And we're able to build hope that way. We also have hope building events like our Project Prom, where we invite waiting teen girls that are going to prom, and we match them with fairy godmothers to serve as their mama for that day. And we go to Dillard's and we buy prom dresses and Spanx and shoes and accessories, and then we all go to a fun, yummy lunch together to build hope in our waiting kids. And then the third thing is to help connect them with the right forever families. And I don't say that lightly, not just any old waiting family, but the right forever families. And to do that, we work every day closely with every single adoption specialist in our state. As I said, our logistics coordinator answers all the inquiries. So she's the kind of the gatekeeper and sends people that are approved and open to the adoption staff around the state. She keeps up with the Heart Gallery master list and has all of that. And then we host connection events almost every month. And what that is that are events that are not open to the public, but they're events where waiting kids come, and then families who have completed the adoption certification process and are open waiting to adopt come. These events, we get criticism from time to time because it seems awkward, and it is awkward. And what I tell waiting families, we will host a Zoom right before the event to help them know what to expect, to help them be prepared. But what I tell them is it is awkward, and why it's awkward is because kids should not be in foster care. And kids should not be waiting to be adopted. They should be able to be raised in their family of origin with love and respect and nurture and safety. But when that is not an option, it's up to us to give waiting kids a voice and to give them an opportunity. And so our events are over the top, many of them, where it is so much fun for kids. And we tell our families, don't focus so much on finding a child. That's not it. We're all pouring into our waiting kids. And then when we see families born in the middle of that, that's a gift. And so we're raising awareness, we're building hope, we're helping connect waiting kids, and then we're tweaking that as we go along. 2 years ago, we started an event called Shine for our special needs kids it was just too much sensory overload to come to some of our other events. And so last year at our Shine event, there's no registration, there's no wristbands, it's quiet, there's no music, and there were 20 kids that came to that event. And as we're standing, our little staff standing there, we looked at each other and said, there's something really special about what's going on here. And we found out later what we were feeling, and that is the fact that 6 of those 20 kids met their forever families that day in the middle of that course of those 2 hours. And so it's tweaking those 3 things. They're morphing up, they're on steroids, but it's what can we do to raise awareness, to build hope, and to help connect kids with their forever families. And so the things that we started 14 years ago are the things that we're still doing. We're just doing them with more intensity and more intentionality. Mm-hmm. And I think the other piece of that puzzle is I want us to do things with humility and with gratitude for the people that come alongside us. And I want us to do things with excellence, because when we do things with excellence, it shows a watching world how we value waiting kids, how God values waiting kids. And that's what we need them to see. In my foster care years, there were times when people said things that just almost sent me to bed, with things like, he's so clean and everything, about one of my precious babies that I was holding in a store. And they're like, that is not okay. These are our children, and it's our responsibility to fight for them with all we've got in an excellent way, with respect and with gratitude, until we get every one of them home.
This is beautiful. I agree with everything you just said. And it's hard. I just released a book called It's Okay to Talk About Adoption, because sometimes we mean well when we say things, but we lack how to say them. Like my husband and I adopted biological siblings together. So we went from 0 to 2 kids. And I remember having a young woman over who we were in like a Bible study together. She's in college, and we're just hanging out one afternoon. And she was like, are you and your husband like having an infertility journey? And I didn't know what to say because I thought, oh my gosh, like where did this come from? But I didn't realize that like that's all she knew about adoption. Like she thought, oh, when you can't have babies
Exactly.
biologically, this and so I was offended in that moment. And that
Yes.
maturing and growing me has since learned, like, oh, I have
Yes.
to just kind of pause and see.
Right.
But I think sometimes we just lack being educated or informed. And
Yes.
it is interesting to hear how as you were mentioning some of these setups of how you're coordinating events, and there's a little bit of sometimes pushback. I'm going, well, what's the alternative? Like, how people, if you have ideas, like, you
The
know,
alternative is what was going on in our state before, which was you might have a heart gallery picture, you might not.
yeah.
And that's it. And
And then
so,
kids keep
yeah,
waiting. We don't
they're
need that.
waiting.
We don't want that. Yeah,
No, no.
absolutely. So, Chrissy, I've
So,
got three kind of logistics questions because I'm curious, if you will,
absolutely.
before we kind of button things up. So, I'm wondering because you mentioned you have folks internationally that contact you. Our listeners are across the country. So, if a listener goes on Project
Mhm.
Zero, sees whoever, sibling group, whoever, and they are licensed, can you do interstate adoptions?
The answer to that is yes and no. Yes, we do not make the determination as to whether or not a child is available for out of state adoption. DCFS makes those determinations. But on the inquiry field of a child's page on the Heart Gallery, so like you'll see the child's individual page, which will have should have a photo, a bio, and then a short film, or if not, we're in process. And then the inquiry section will tell you Arkansas residents only or out of state inquiries accepted. And so we had an incident in November where one of our boys, we did a reel, his name's Justin, and it was seen over 1 million times. And Anna kept getting these just bunches and bunches of out of state inquiries. So I said, hey, why don't you reach out to his adoption specialist and just see, is there would they ever consider? And so she did. They pulled their team together, the attorney, the therapist, everybody, and they said, there's really no reason. So they opened it up, started receiving home studies, and within a few weeks, he had a family in another state. And so,
Oh.
and they drove to Arkansas and saw him at Christmas and just crazy things. And so you can find that information out, on the individual Heart Gallery pages.
That education is really helpful. And listeners, if you've been doing any browsing of the Heart Gallery, that often is the case. So I just wanted to dispel that because it is important to read that fine print. Because if you don't live in, say, Arkansas, and you're
Yes.
looking and thinking any child, that's not true because you have to really read to make sure you're understanding what's in the best interest of the child. And so, kind of going back to your approach, I'm curious from like an
Yes.
adoption finalization standpoint, did you, because I know courts open on National Adoption Day, often the Saturday
Yes.
after Thanksgiving, because we're trying to help kids have a finalization before the holiday. Did you have any other like kind of special outside of regular business hours that you needed to have court systems open?
That's a great question. And no, we didn't. We were part of a national adoption push, and we have been over the last, I don't know, many, many, many years here in the county that Little Rock's in. But it was very small, and I think there were 3 finalizations that day. I think what's happening with us is, and this is just another little snippet of what we do. Every quarter, we have 20 hours of Zooms in 1 week with every adoption specialist in our state.
And
And
you just
so,
had this because we were trying to email
yes.
and we're like,
Oh
I'm
my
in that
word.
movie.
Yes, it's wild. But what it does, we go through every single waiting child. So we're talking about how are they doing? Do they need hope? They've got a family. When is that going to be final? So it's really cool because none of that falls through the cracks. And this was brought on by our partnership with DCFS. I mean, we have two permanency outcome specialists that are dear friends that we work so closely with, and so it's our little team that does this meeting. And so when you cut those communication problems, and you've got people at DCFS that are saying, okay, they've been home for 6 months. Why has it not been finalized? And then that starts moving forward. You don't have this huge push just during certain times like National Adoption Month. You're doing it all the way as soon as it needs to be done. And so,
Yeah.
not to say now we have in the past, a couple of years ago, there was a a judge up in Northeast Arkansas that opened this old courtroom and did a cool thing, and we got to go to that, and it was really neat. Did a whole bunch of adoptions in one day, but not this year. This year it was just, I don't know, it was just miracles happening along.
Constant communication. For listeners that might be in the education realm, so my husband teaches K through for art, and I know before the school year starts, part of that kind of teachers being in the classrooms a week early. This is public schools in Missouri. They do a similar thing. He has all the kids, so he has to go classroom by classroom, and different questions, but similar, right? Like they're
Right.
trying to learn what are the needs of the kids, what do we know. So some teachers that are listening might be like, that makes a whole lot of sense, and you're like, it's working really effectively, and so
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
cool. I'm
It's
also
good.
wondering, because I think some of our listeners are going, well, if your name is Project Zero, what are you going to focus on once you have zero children waiting? So, Christy, do you have an answer for that?
Oh my goodness, that's a big one. I laughed and said, "Well, I guess we'll help other states,"
Yes.
but but we, there's such fluidity that if we got to zero, we wouldn't be at zero tomorrow because we'd have kids whose parental rights have been TPR'd. But then again, let's go back to what we said. If we had families
Yes.
lined up, we could get pretty close to zero pretty quickly. So I think it's just continuing to pray to get to zero. And I don't know. I don't know. We work ourselves out of a name and a job. So
Well, it just sounds like maybe you're morphing your mission, right? I mean,
yeah.
good business and my corporate day job, like you adapt and you what we call it transform, right? And it's like you already changed
Oh,
your name once with a different name. And I love your vision. I'm like, Christy, yes, you've given me so much hope.
oh,
Because there's differing ways to help in this space, and sometimes we
right.
mean well, but where's the outcome? And then sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, Christy, you're like the beacon of the nation. Please teach everyone. So
Oh,
as we close, I'm going to ask you that. So I wonder what advice you would give to other states, and this might be anywhere from like, I work for child welfare, I'm with a private agency. It could also be people like me that are like, I adopted to the system, or it's others that are like, I help children, I'm a therapist, I'm a social worker, I work in a school. What can we learn from your approach? Because we have to, if you're not going to kind of come to the whole country just yet, how can we kind of impart what you've taught us and help?
I think realize that there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be hard stuff. There's going to be times when you might be standing in a cemetery with a child that has passed away. There's going to be times when you're going to go to bed with grief over what you could have done and didn't do. But I think the one of the keys is realizing it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about every single child in this country, vulnerable, who needs to know that they matter. They need to know that somebody is championing their cause. Somebody cares, and that they are not lost. And so I think it also is not about coming into the state and saying we know better, we know best. It's coming in and saying humbly, we want to help. We have no ulterior motives. We don't want money. We don't want power. What we want is we want to come alongside you. We want to lock arms and we want to do everything we can do to get our kids home. Are you willing? And what does that look like? And from that, relationships begin, friendships begin, locking arms begins, and change is inevitable. And I promise you, prayers are answered, miracles happen, and you will be standing in awe of what can be done with regular, ordinary people coming together with a God who can help do extraordinary things in the midst of it. So,
I'm so honored to hear from you. It's interesting as I think back. I think our email thread started in like 2020. Actually, no,
sorry.
I think 2022 was about 4 years ago, and I was at the time United States of America's Mrs. Ohio 2022, and I wore your shirt. I took it with me to Vegas for nationals, and I remember being like, "You all are doing something," and we exchanged a bit, and things just happened. But what I love about the right now of this, Christy, is being able to follow and know what's going along as an outsider for a bit, but the exact timing of right now and what that's going to mean to our listeners and hearing how in that time we didn't get to follow step by step, but in that time you've improved and been flexible and been out of the box. And I just want to say thank you for staying in this field. Thank you to your team for being so creative and brave, because I know with creativity comes a bit of, what's everyone else going to think? And man, I think you all are doing incredible things. I'm so proud to be in the same country. And I really hope that our listeners, and I know myself, I'm leaving with so much hope of, really just saying yes, Christie. So thank you for sharing with us the important things you're doing. And we're cheering you on as you get to that zero.
Thank you so much, Marcy. What an honor it is for me to get to be on your podcast and to get to share about waiting kids. And it's very humbling and just such an honor. So I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, it's been absolutely beautiful to hear what you're doing, Christie. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. It truly matters that you listen today, because by tuning in, you're opening your heart to the stories of children in foster care, sparking empathy and starting to see how your unique role, whether as a friend, advocate, or even as a future adoptive parent, can bring hope and belonging to a child or sibling group that is waiting. I also want to personally invite you to reach out to me to ask anything that's on your heart. I promise no judgment. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and I mean it when I say you can ask anything. I know it can feel awkward to ask questions publicly, and that's why I carve out time during my lunch hour and evenings while my kids and husband are at martial arts to mentor others one-on-one. Your questions matter, your curiosity matters, and most importantly, the role you are playing in helping children in foster care matters. Together, we can bring hope and belonging. Until next time, take care and keep the conversation going.